Okay, all right. So yesterday we just understood like what are web applications. So these applications are not hosted onto our machine. We are able to access them as they are hosted somewhere onto the cloud. We can access them. Okay, so here we will be mainly talking about the dynamic applications because they are more prone to vulnerabilities. We'll also be talking about websites and what all vulnerabilities could be there in static sites and what issues could be there in dynamic sites. Okay, so we discussed yesterday that web applications are the softwares programs which are accessible via web browsers, and we do not need to install them onto our system. They are hosted somewhere else remotely. We are just accessing them. Fine. Then we understood about the architecture of a web application. So now these are some of the common layers which are there in every web application. We have a front end, we have a back end, we have a database, web server, as well as APIs. So this front end is basically that part of site like which is helping us in interacting with the website. Let's say if you're having the website, your website is having buttons, it is having animation, it is having colors. So that thing is basically the front end of the site. So now I'm just sharing my screen and I'm just taking you to any random website. We'll explore that. Okay. All right. So now let's come to Spotify for now. Okay. So, for example, we are having this site, Spotify. Let it load. Okay. Yeah. So, this is the site. Now, here you all can just see what is the see, this is the page where we are interacting the site with. We are having this sign up button, login button. If I am clicking onto this sign up, it is getting highlighted. This login button is getting big. If I will click onto this library, I can create a playlist. If I will open, if I will be searching for any music, I can just do that. So this is basically the front end of the site. So in front end, we are basically talking about how the site is looking, how we are interacting with the site. Now in this front end, we are also concerned about the user interface and the user experience of the site. Okay. So all these things are the part of front end. Fine. Okay. So this front end is basically the client side part. It is the user facing part. Okay, there are a lot of technologies which are helpful in creation of front end like HTML, JavaScript, CSS. We have a lot of frameworks also like React, Angular. Okay, so now if I just right click on the site, just a second, let's say my system is getting hang. Yeah, so let's say if you are seeing any any site source code, you can see that here the language which you will be seeing is HTML, because HTML is the language which is helpful in giving website a structure. Okay, so this HTML is providing a structure to the web application just like a backbone. Okay, so we need to have knowledge about HTML, JS, CSS as well. So this thing also we shall be seeing. Okay, all right. Now the next component of the site which we have is server side or its backend. Okay, so now let's come to presentation again. Now let's talk about backend. Now in this backend, we are having so this backend is basically a layer which is helpful in processing the requests. It is running the logic, and we are able to interact with the database because of this backend layer. Okay, even our database is built up in the backend, because whatsoever site you will see, you will not be seeing database directly here, because that is not client facing. So there is some server, onto that server you are having database, and all your information is getting stored in that database. Okay, so now there are a lot of there are a lot of languages which are helpful in the backend, like Python, PHP, Node.js, Java. Okay, all right. Now let us talk about the next layer, that is database. So even see, so in backend we have database too, but here I have written it as a separate layer, because we need to have knowledge of database as well, because there are a lot of vulnerabilities which will be specific to SQL and some will be specific to NoSQL. So we need to have knowledge of database as well, so that will be easy for us to basically spot the issues and to rectify them. So we will be learning about database layer as well. Okay, then we are having the next layer, which is web server. So this web server is basically handling your requests. Okay, and even this web server is of different types. We have static servers, we have dynamic servers. So we will be learning about these things also in detail. For now, I'm just introducing you with the topic like web application architecture. And today we will be deep diving into the first layer, which is the front end layer. Fine? Okay. Then we have this API, which is application programming interface. So this API is a layer which is helpful in connecting different components together in the application, and which is enabling the smooth data exchange. So these are the mainly five layers of any web application which you all should know and which we shall be studying. Okay, because a vulnerability could either be at front end side or server side, or it could be at database layer, or it could be in API. So we need to have knowledge of these components. Okay, so all right. Yeah, so for now, if you're having no doubts, you can just tell me. And if you have any doubts, you please let me know.
Don't have doubt.
Okay, all right, fine. So now we also need to know about HTTP request and response. Okay, see, okay, now here let me explain you about the client server architecture. So here I am drawing. Okay, see, this is the client and this is the server. Client is requesting something to the server. For example, client is searching google.com. Okay, so this client is my Firefox browser and I am searching google.com. Now my request is going to server send. Now server is doing the processing and server is providing me with the relevant response. This is the request response architecture. Like we are requesting server something, server is understanding the request, server is doing some processing at the backend, and then server is giving the response. Fine. Now see, we are only searching google.com onto our laptops, but how does this request actually looks like? So now we will be understanding like what is this request and what is this response. Okay, and what all are the important components in request and response, because this is a very fundamental concept which you all should know. Right? Okay, so now I am sharing my whiteboard and we shall be understanding request and response. I guess my whiteboard is visible. Okay. Okay. All right. See, now, now this request and response architecture, it's a very foundational model in web communication. Okay, so now here, whatsoever communication is happening between client and server, that is happening with the help of this request and response. Now, firstly, let us understand like how is our request looking like. So now we are going to understand the request architecture. Okay. All right. Now see, this request is initiated by the client, such as web browser, and whenever a user is interacting with a website, such as by typing URL or by clicking on the link or by submitting a form. Fine. Now let's understand the components of the HTTP request. So firstly, we are having HTTP method. Okay. Then we are having a URL. Then we have headers, we have body. So these are some of the components of request. Okay. So in every request, you will be seeing HTTP method, URL, headers, and body. Fine. Okay. So, all right. So firstly, I want to show you all like how this request looks like. So now I am opening my Kali. Okay, so how many of you are not having Kali in your laptops? Please tell me. Is there anybody who is not having Kali in their system?
Shruti, I'm using Parrot OS, not Kali.
Okay, okay, that's also fine. This
Mhm.
means like any OS, which is helpful like Parrot or Kali. So means you all are having, right? So even you all can open your Kali Linux or Parrot OS if you are having. So firstly, we are seeing like how a request looks like. Okay, so let it load. Fine. Okay. So now here I am logging into Kali. Okay. All right. Now I am basically opening this Bob suite. So it is a collection of a lot of tools which is helpful in the pen test process, be it reconnaissance, be it scanning, be it performing attacks. So we shall be learning about Bob suite also in detail. Okay. So now I am opening this tool. For now, I am just showing you how a request looks like and how a response looks like so that we can understand the components properly because that is the basic thing which you all should know. Okay. Now here I am just going to proxy and now I am opening the browser. Okay. All right. Now here I am just turning intercept on and I am see by default we can see this Chromium browser which will be opening with this Burp Suite. You can even set up Burp Suite in your in your main browser. So this I will guide you once we will learn about the common tools For now, we are only understanding how a request and how a response looks like. For example, I am just searching for, let's say, testfire.net, for example. So it's a site, and now I am pressing enter. So here, can you all see? This is how a request looks like. I hope my screen is visible. I can even take its screenshot. That will be better. Now, yeah, so now is it clear? Okay. All right. See, so now this is how a request looks like. Here I'm just writing. This is a this is a very basic request. Here, firstly, we are having the HTTP method. This is also known as the request method. So this first thing here we have this get. So this get is basically a HTTP method or a request method. Now, this is specifying the action which the client wants the server to perform on the resource. Okay, so here we are trying to get information from the server, so that's why we are seeing get method. Let's say if I am uploading something on the server, then we will be seeing a post method. If I am updating something, I will be seeing a different method, means put method. If I will be deleting some resource, then I will be seeing delete method. So we have different types of HTTP methods. Okay, so they are basically defining like what action client is wanting server to perform. Fine. So the first thing is HTTP method. Now this HTTP method, now this HTTP method, like this is of like many types, and we will commonly be learning about get method, post method, put method, delete method, and patch method. So these are some of the common methods which I have stated. Okay. So this thing we shall be learning in detail later on. For now, you just see like what all are the main components of a request. Fine. Then the second component which we have is the URL. Okay. So here we are having the URL or the domain, which is the host. It is testfire.net here. Okay, so this is the site like whose request I have captured. So this thing we are seeing in the first header, which is the host header. Okay, all right, yeah. So below we have header. So see, even host is also a header. We have this host header, accept language header. We have upgrade insecure request header. So means like every site, whatever site you will interact with, you will be getting some unique type of headers there as well. But the main components will remain same. Firstly, you will be having the HTTP method. Then you will be having the domain in the host header, and then you are having different headers. Okay, so now what is this headers for? This header is basically the metadata about the request. Okay, means which is information about the request. Some extra information about the request is written in these headers. Okay, so like you might be knowing what is metadata. It is data about the data. Fine. Okay, now here you all can see that we have yeah, so we have these type of headers. Now some of the common headers I am writing. We have content type header, we have user agent, we have authorization, we have accept, we have cookie. So these are some of the common types of headers. And see, there are a lot of headers, means there will be more than hundreds of headers. Okay, so even these headers are of two types. One are these headers which is only having some information about the request, and secondary we are having security headers. Okay, so those headers also we shall be seeing. Fine. So now this content type header is basically telling the media type of the request, like what type of data this request is basically like what type of data this request is actually dealing with. Okay, then we have this user agent. So this user agent is basically describing the client's browser or the operating system. Then we have this accept, like what type of data is being accepted. So now it is also telling that it is accepting encoded in gzip. So see, now here we have this header which is accept encoding. So this gzip is a type of encoding format. Then we have deflate and then we have br. Okay, now below we have cookie. So cookies, they are basically small pieces of code which are storing your session information. And in this cookie, we have a parameter which is for session ID, and it is storing the session value. Right? So these are some of the common headers which I am talking about. There are a lot of headers. Okay, and I shall be sharing some notes also with you. You all can just refer those too. So for now, if anybody is having any doubts, you all can just tell me. Okay. All right. So I am sharing my screen again if you have no doubts. Now we are understanding the process of sending of a request. Like what is happening at the backend. If I am typing google.com or if I am searching amazon.com. Now what is happening at the backend? So this thing I am going to explain you all. Okay. All right. See, now we are just seeing the process of sending a request, like how a request is actually going at the server. So now the topic which we are seeing is process of sending the request. Okay. So now firstly, now let's say a user has entered the URL in the browser, or he is interacting with the page. So this is the first thing which is the client side action. So this is the monitor. If there is some person, he is basically filling a form, he is pressing the submit button, he is interacting with the site for now. Okay. Now the moment he has pressed enter, what will happen at the backend? Firstly, DNS resolution will happen. So the domain name is mapped with the IP address. Okay, and then a secure connection is established. So now this client will be trying to establish a secure TCP IP connection with the server. So now let's say if this is the server, so this client will be trying to maintain a secure TCP IP connection with the server using HTTPS protocol or any other protocol which the client is using. Okay, and then the browser will be sending the HTTP request to server, including all the methods, URLs, headers, and body if it is having any. So this is how the request is sent to server. So firstly, client is interacting with the site. The moment he is pressing enter or if he is clicking somewhere, so immediately DNS resolution is happening. The domain name is mapped with the IP address, and then a secure connection is established. And whenever a browser is sending your request, along with your request, method, body, and other headers, they are also going at the server's place. So this is how the process of sending the request is working. Am I clear to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes,
Now
ma'am.
let us, okay, that's great. Now let's know about response. Okay. So now this was all about request. Firstly, we saw how a request looks like. Then we understood some of the common request headers, and then we understood how the process of sending the request is actually happening at the backend. So now what we are seeing, now we will be learning about response. We will be seeing common components of response, and then we shall be seeing like how a response is actually coming to client's browser, and how the data is actually rendered at a browser. So now, see. So now what is this response? So this response is what the server is sending back to client after processing. Okay. So now this could be even, so see, this could be an HTML page. Okay. This we can even get a JSON data as response. We can even get some error during response. Right. Now, now see some of the components of response. Firstly, we are having the status code and error message. Status code and error message. We also call it as status message. Status code, status message. Then we have headers. Okay. And then we have body. Fine. Now, here I am showing you. I hope I am onto my Kali. Okay, let me go to my Kali. Okay. Now here I am basically sending it to repeater, and here I am coming, and if I just send it, see, this is how our response looks like. Let me take the screenshot and then I will be pasting in whiteboard. Okay, so this is how our response looks like. Like I told you, firstly, we are having the status line. We call this line as status line. Now, this line is actually including the HTTP version, okay, status code and status message. So this 200 is a status code and this OK is a status message. Okay. We have basically 5 type of response codes. We have 1XX series, 2XX series, 3XX series, 4XX series, and 5XX series. So these series also we shall be discussing in depth. Okay, and what are the most commonly type of status codes which even interviewer can ask during the time of interview. So this thing also we shall be seeing. Now you just see, so this is the status code and it is the status message. It is basically telling that your request was successful and we are seeing okay. Whatsoever thing I wanted to ask from the server has properly understood and server is saying okay. And now server is giving me the proper response what I have asked for. It is okay. Alright. Then yeah. Below I have headers. So this set cookie is a header. This is a path is a header. This content type is a header. Date is a header. Length is a header. These are headers. Right? And below we have body. Can you see? So this is the body. This is the body. Okay. Yeah, so now see, just like in request also, headers were carrying metadata about the request, means some more extra information about the request. And here also, in response, what is happening in headers? They are carrying the information about the response. Okay, so headers, so some headers of request and response are different, but many of the headers are common. Okay, like content length, content type, date, set cookie. So these headers are some of the common headers. Then we have this body. So this body is containing the actual data, actual content, which is returned by the server. Okay, so now this data could be the HTML data like we are seeing. So now this data, whenever this is released, like whenever I will be sending the request, now browser will be releasing this response, and then the web page is being rendered by the browser. Right? Okay, so this is so these are some of the common components of our response. We have a status line, we have the headers, and we have a body. So this body is actually having the main data, which is being returned and which is rendered onto the screen. Right? Now let us see the process of sending off the response. Okay. So firstly, what is happening whenever we are requesting something to the server is basically processing the client's request. Okay. And what actions this processing includes? So I said server is basically processing the request. Processing the request. Now, what is there in this processing? Okay, so now in this processing, server might involve fetching the data from the database. Okay, so here I am just writing fetching data from database. Okay, then this could be even performing some computation or rendering the HTML page or rendering the HTML page. Okay. So now, yeah. So now whenever a server is processing the request, so now this processing could be fetching the data, it could be performing the computation, or it could be rendering the HTML page. Fine. And after processing, the server is basically generating the HTTP response, which is having proper status code, headers, and the body. Okay, so once the request is properly processed, then only this status line is being defined by the server. Okay, if the request is successful, then this will be showing us 200 okay status code. Okay, and so these status code and their messages I will be teaching you. Fine. And then what is happening? The server is sending the response back to client over the established TCP IP connection which was created by the client. And then the response is rendered at the browser. So this is how our response is like, so this is how we are receiving the response onto our browser. Fine. So are you getting a clear picture how a request is working, how a response is working? Please tell me.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now let us know about. Okay. So now let me come back to my presentation. Okay. All right. So now this was what I wanted to make you all aware of. Okay. Now see. Firstly, we started with the introduction, then we came on to this architecture, then we understood request and response, how they are working, how a request is basically going to server, how a server is giving response to client. Now we will be seeing what is this OWASP top 10. And here onto this topic, even I want to know from you all, like what is your understanding of this topic, OWASP top 10. So, firstly, you all tell me, like, is there anybody who is having no idea of this concept? Okay, no issues. I will still be revising it. Okay. So, this OWASP stands for Open Web Application Security Project. So, this OWASP is basically a non profit organization which is releasing the list of top 10 most commonly found critical vulnerabilities in the web applications. So, now this OWASP is having its top 10 list for APIs also, for mobile also. These days, for AI also, this OWASP is having its top 10 list. But here we are learning about the OWASP top 10 list, which is there for web applications. So now this is basically a standard awareness document which highlights the most critical risks to the web applications. And here all these vulnerabilities, they are in the sequence. Okay, means from most critical to the least critical vulnerability. Firstly, we have broken access control, then we have cryptographic failure, then we have injection, we have insecure design, security misconfiguration, vulnerable outdated components, identification and authentication failures, software and data integrity failures, security logging and monitoring failures, and SSRF. So these are the top 10 vulnerabilities in this OWASP list. Now, see, there are a lot of vulnerabilities which will come under each of the category. Like if I'll talk about injection, we have SQLI, we have XXE, we have no SQL injection, we have cross-site scripting attack. So we have a lot of type of vulnerabilities under these categories. Okay. All right. So now, just like in broken access control, here we will be learning about a lot of uh, authentication-based flaws, problem in open authentication systems, and a lot more issues which we shall be seeing. Okay. So yeah, now I would like to know from you all: is there anybody who is having no knowledge of OWASP top 10, at least the basic knowledge? Kindly tell me.